Then on another level, so let's look at the words, there's something wrong with me, so that's a belief about who I am. It's not actually who I am. There's nothing wrong with anyone in who they are. So that, but then those words have a feeling associated with them, because if all this network was, had built itself and there wasn't the feeling there, it wouldn't have density. It would be like really, really flimsy. It would be like a tree without roots. It'd just topple over and collapse. But because these things feel true, it's what makes them seem so real.
Yeah, it's like if I ever thought that I'm a piece of shit, if I don't have an associated feeling that I'm a piece of shit, that thought it's nothing. I just like, it doesn't affect me at all. I need to actually feel that on a somatic level as well.
Exactly. So I could say, I'm a pink turtle, and like that doesn't feel true. It doesn't feel true at all. It's like, yeah, that doesn't mean anything. That's fine. But if then, back then, if I say there's something wrong with me, it's kind of like, oh yeah, that feels true. That's who I am. Felt like I would be kicked in the stomach. Like, yeah, that's so true. And so what happens is, our relationship to life, our relationship to ourselves is completely distorted by this network. Um, and what ends up happening is that whole network, those unconscious belief systems drive everything we do. So I get into a relationship, like a romantic relationship, and I view the person through that traumatized lens. That's what I call it, a traumatized lens. I view them through that traumatized lens, and what ends up happening is I sabotage the whole thing, or I abuse them, or I do whatever, because I'm not seeing them, I'm seeing this belief system. And so what most human beings are calling a romantic relationship and is not a relationship between two people, it's a relationship between two thought systems. And then what happens is you get a dysfunctional thought system meeting a dysfunctional thought system, and you end up with like a trauma soup playing out. And it's a self-perpetuating cycle, because this trauma meets this trauma, and this trauma traumatizes this trauma even more. This trauma traumatizes this trauma even more, and it sort of embeds that network deeper and deeper and deeper. And I think this is what most human beings are doing. And in Buddhism, they talk about the wheel of samsara, the wheel of suffering. And I keep going like this because it is a loop. And if you're following what I'm saying, see if you can see how it is a loop. This is a self-perpetuating loop called, we can call it the ego, or we can call it the false self. Or we can call it all the things that I've called it, simply belief systems, but they're loops. They're loops, and they self-perpetuate. And like I said at the start, investigation is a way to start to undo those knots.
Being born, we're born as this presence, right? And we won't go into like genealogical trauma, all that kind of stuff, in utero trauma, but let's just say we're born as this pure presence. Now, there's a very good reason why we have to build this network, as you call it, this identity. It's like we have to exist as a human being on this planet. We have to exist in a culture, because if we just were born in pure presence the whole time, we wouldn't get on too well. We wouldn't exist. So it's like I have to download for those first 7 to 12 years. I need to download what it means to be a human being. So that's why, evolutionary speaking, that's why our brain's in a theta brainwave for those first 7 years, which is we're in a hypnotic state the whole time, because we're just downloading subconscious programs on what it means to be a human. Now, where do we get those programs from? It'd be beautiful if we had the most amazing coder and programmer and developer in the world putting those programs in, but we get it from our family. We get it from our parents, our siblings, our school teachers, and our society as a whole. Now, if we have a dysfunctional society, then we are just going to download dysfunctional programs. And we kind of download those to a varying degree, depending on, if we're born into a conscious, well-off family, or we're born in the slums. It's so dependent on these things. So then we think that we go from this pure being and we become this other thing. But like what you were saying, Matt, we still have this being here the whole time. We just create this identity over here, and then we forget about this part. And I think what we both spoke about when we had our moments where we woke up was just realizing, oh, this thing, this has been here the whole time. I've been focused over here. Now, after realizing that, and I know that, some of you on this call would have realized that part's still there, and some haven't. It's just a conceptual idea. If you had told me back when I was a drug addict, there's this part of you that's completely whole and feels peace and is all good, I would have said, sounds good, but I don't feel it. But if you stay on this path, you will feel that part. Yeah, and that's why that makes the whole journey worth it. But then we still have to exist as a human. We still have work, family, friends. We still have all this shit going on. And but then it's like, oh, I see the human from a different perspective. And if there's things I want to change about myself, I want to alter this identity, then I can do that not from a place of there's something wrong with me or deficient, just that, hey, I want this human to have a bit of a different experience of life because I keep having the same patterns show up over and over again.
Yeah, so just quickly, it's sort of like I'm reminded of the words of Nisargadatta, who was an Indian sage, and he was saying, someone, you too could see what I see, but due to the wrong focus of attention, you don't see it. And it's this part of us, because of this overlay that's been built. This isn't a workshop on awakening, but it's outside of attention, and it's like our faces are glued to this network, this narrative called the mind. Let's just call it the mind. That we never investigate because it's real. There's a consensus that it's real, that it's who we are. That this and that. Like, I just had a friend go through a psychologist report, and the report ended up saying deficient in this, deficient in that. Literally, the word deficient. And I was like, oh God, like when psychologists and mental health practitioners actually embed the belief in deficiency, there's something's got to be looked at.